All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandon Meinert, BIM Program Manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Are you recording?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start over. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandon Meinert with BIM Program Manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. As a technical specialist for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I'm responsible for leading and supporting the use of advanced modeling technologies across the project lifecycle. In addition to my role at USACE, I'm also the chair of the Training and Education Committee with SLC3, as well as the co-chair of our technology subcommittee. As always, we begin with a few housekeeping items. Please make sure that you are muted to eliminate any disruptions during this afternoon's program. We hope you are also free from distractions as much as you can be, and we ask that any questions be sent through the chat feature on the bottom of your screen, and we'll address those during our open session. You can also raise your hand and your question or comment can be addressed more immediately. Because this program is recorded, a copy of this program is available after the program for all registrants. Rebecca Hutchison-Hale and I will help monitor questions in the chat. We do like to know who you are, so please take a moment now to rename your name if you haven't done so already, and your company if you would. You can accomplish this by clicking on the upper right of your video box and choose Rename. As a reminder, we are a community of design and construction industry stakeholders with a common interest in the betterment of our region. Our planning committee has identified 4 key pillars of our organization: innovation, continuing education, equity empowerment, and an all-inclusive workforce collaboration. As I have previously mentioned, I am the chair of the Training and Education Committee alongside Katie Goldberg with IMEG, our associate co-chair. We lead a committee of 24 volunteers dedicated to deliver exceptional educational programs each month. Thank you to all the members, and a special thank you to our technology subcommittee team for coordinating this program today, along, of course, with our SLC3 staff. Speaking of the SLC3 staff, I would like to make sure that you know who to reach out to. Kelly Jackson is our executive director. Rebecca Hutchison-Hale is our event and marketing coordinator, and Amber Spence handles our bookkeeping and provides all our overall support. We want to thank them for all their hard work in continuing to successfully grow our membership and manage our SLC3 operations. We always seek your evaluations at the conclusion of each program. The program survey should be in your inboxes upon completion of this program. The program evaluations and comments are used to prepare for future programming, as well as determine the overall value of our education and networking programs for the year. We do take all evaluations seriously and always hope to improve on our programs. Your support is important, and it only takes a few minutes of your time to respond. As always, we have a packed calendar designed to meet the needs of our full membership. We are sure you'll find programs and events you'll want to mark in your calendar. Speaking of some of those events, on April 27th, we have a women's leadership lunch hosted by Jennifer Bodo with Grit. On May 1st, we have our annual golf tournament and awards dinner. On May 18th, we have our virtual diversity town hall. And on May 23rd, we have our owner-only virtual chat. Note that this program is eligible for both PDH and Learning Unit credits for 1.5 hours. The certification is available under the resources under the SLC3 website. Also note that you can find the PDH or LU forms from past events, as well as handouts and more under this same tab. Please be sure to visit our website regularly for great resources and updates to these events. Before our program begins, we want to take the time to give a special recognition to our annual training and education program sponsors. Our annual platinum sponsor again this year is Cosney Wagner. Please thank them for all their support each and every year. Our gold sponsors are McGrath and Associates, Ross and Barazzini, Kwame Building Group, and Keeley Construction. Our silver sponsors are Farnsworth Group, Kaiser Electric, JF Electric, Abna Engineering, and OWH Architects, Ameren, Customer Engineering, and Hush Blackwell. And we also want to thank our bronze sponsors, Brinkman Constructors and Midwest Monograms Promotions. Thank you to all our sponsors. Now to our scheduled program. We are excited to offer this program of engaging panel conversation with subject matter technology experts as we discuss how culture eats innovation for breakfast. Our panelists bring a diverse background of expertise as we explore their company value propositions and applications for technology use in areas of BIM, VDC, digital twins, field operations and applications, cloud collaboration, prefabrication, autonomous and semi-autonomous devices, AI, and more. Panelists are here to share the lessons learned on strategies and provide best practices on technology adoption and implementation. So let's get some introductions going. First, I want to thank Chris Link, Bill Carney, Dylan Blake, and Alex Belkoffer for returning to this panel again this year. They helped us kick this webinar off last year, but for today's event, we wanted to have a follow-up session taking a deeper dive into technology adoption and implementation strategies. Unfortunately, Mike Lawless with IMEG, who sat on the panel last year, couldn't join us today, so I'll be filling in for him, providing input from an owner's perspective. Bill Carney is the design technology principal at DLR Group. Although no longer located in St. Louis, he has spent his entire career here. Bill leads DLR's design technology group globally, and he focuses on establishing and executing strategies, enhancing BIM and digital design technology teams. Dylan Blake, after earning his mechanical engineering degree from the University of Missouri Science and Technology, Dylan is Murphy's BIM manager. He is an experienced fabrication engineer and highly skilled in CAD, BIM, and plumbing. Alex Belkoffer. Alex is a regional leader and national collaborator at McCarthy as their Director of Virtual Design and Construction. He's responsible for overall strategy, implementation, and execution of the virtual design and construction lifecycle process between all project stakeholders. He is a return speaker who has shared extensive information on VDC. And Chris Link, our moderator. Chris is a VDC regional manager with CRB. He has over 20 years of design, CAD, BIM, and project management experience. He founded the St. Louis Revit user group, and he didn't hesitate to accept our request to moderate once again. Thanks, Chris, for being here. And on that note, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brandon. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us again this afternoon. And thank you again for all the panelists. It's exciting to get together again and just geek out a little bit and talk a little bit more about our technology evolution and how we're kind of bringing that to our organizations. So on that note, you know, the title of our panel today, right, is how culture eats innovation for breakfast, right? So there's a lot of power in that statement. So so what does that really mean to you guys in your organization, and how does that really apply to your organization, or do you see that in your organization? Let's start out with maybe let's do Bill. Start with you.
Thanks, Chris. For me, I mean, it's just a fact. We, like DLR Group, we're a big firm. We have a lot of medium-sized offices throughout the countries, and they all have their different culture. And I've seen too often a great idea just die on the vine. And the worst part with it is, that person that has that idea, it could be fantastic, it could be successful and on all their projects, and they get frustrated, and the worst thing that can happen is they leave. And they're frustrated because the whole firm doesn't do the thing that they want to do, and they don't understand that you have to change the culture of the rest of the firm to adopt the thing that you're doing in that case. And if people hate change, it's just kind of what we do. And if you can't change people, you can't change the culture, and then your great idea just goes away with like yesterday's Wheaties.
Yep, great. Alex, what about you? How does McCarthy get eaten for breakfast, so to speak?
Well, yeah, like to follow up on Bill's note about it being a fact, right? For us, it's become imperative that it becomes cultural to innovate. So much so to where innovation is one of the four key differentiators for us, and part of our Vision 2024 that we planned for several years ago. Innovation is its own focus area. And for us, we felt it was important to put some structure behind how that would become cultural. And so as we kind of unpack today, I'll talk more about it, but we made a very intentional decision to make that more a part of the fabric of who we are and what we do, because if we don't innovate, then the company really will not grow and be successful beyond where it is today. So it's an imperative for us, Bill and Chris.
Yeah, Dylan. So how about Murphy? I mean, as a large subcontractor, how does innovation's got to be part of your game too?
Yeah. So the name of the game, is try to keep up with the general contractors and the owners and try to deliver a good project. And we've been just trying to keep up with everything, and innovations is a big key point of that. We got to stay on the ball, got to make sure we're up with technologies and come to the table ready. So, for us, we've been trying to change the culture. It's definitely really hard being a subcontractor. You definitely get stuck in your ways, and sometimes it almost feels like you're getting dragged up. And we're kind of just trying to change our whole look on that and trying to be better, be more efficient, and just stay with the innovations and ride the wave.
Okay. Brandon, what about from the owner perspective? How does it innovate at Army Corps?
Yeah, I mean, it does depend on the situation, but we are obviously a larger organization, and being in the government, sometimes some of these adoptions take a little bit longer than liked. For me, when I look at this, it's really hitting on the importance of the human factor and how it relates to maybe your business strategy, or at least in this case, our technology adoption strategy. We're all here. Usually, most of us probably on this call are those innovators or those early adopters seeking to implement new technologies in our organization. I think as we do that, it's getting back to the culture and making sure that we communicate that why, that overall messaging, to make sure that we're here to solve a problem. Sometimes that's just fixing current processes. Sometimes that means adding new tech, but we need to make sure that the message that we're communicating is targeted, and it's a targeted sales pitch. Otherwise, we're setting up ourselves with failure. Too often we see that without that shared vision, without that shared understanding or passion, you have no clear direction or path forward. That really, no matter what we put in place, the culture is going to then be that demise of your strategy, right? So just remembering to make sure that you're taking adequate time to create that shared vision. Don't focus your early efforts maybe on maybe some of those laggers, those late adopters. Get that early buy-in from your early adopters, folks like on this call, and then look to roll things out as you go.
Awesome. Yep, that's great. So maybe to build off of that, so there's lots of different ways, right? Innovation can start. It can either be top down driven or kind of grassroots grown from the bottom up. So where does innovation start at the core? And do you have a formal process and procedure for rolling out that technology? And does it include a culture piece to it?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. We've got a few different approaches. Most of our innovations really are coming from that grassroots strategy. We have, some technology enthusiasts or tech savvy people that, they want to test new products. They want to try to break things or reconfigure things, or maybe just test a new tool that they saw at maybe a conference or something. Or maybe we just have some of those early adopters looking to find those, those ways or that vision to to change project delivery processes. Usually that's a result of, hey, we had some feedback or an after action review from a previous project, we want to make things better, we think this tech will do that. So our first effort is usually mostly rooted around that grassroots effort. We also do leverage an R&D lab. So we have several R&D labs across our enterprise to help us test emerging tech or even build out new tech. They also help us solve a lot of our complex problems that we often can't due to some of the red tape maybe within our district offices. And then we also have a third approach, is that top-down approach. That mandated change from senior leadership. A great example of this was back in 2012. We had them dictate that BIM is going to be used on all USAFE projects. And we had to develop a strategic plan and a roadmap and on how we're going to implement all those things. And we're doing it again as we look to do other efforts, such as our construction management platform modernization. So multiple efforts or strategies. Again, it depends on the situation. I think to highlight your point of the cultural piece, it's going back to, again, just making sure that we're keeping the customer or the culture in mind. They are our biggest asset. They're the ones that are going to make this change happen. So making sure that their voices are heard. And so that way, when we roll out these new tools, they're applicable, right? They're applicable to the jobs that they're doing. They're scalable regardless of the project that it's on, and then it's sustainable. We don't want to just create a bunch of pilot projects, a bunch of one-offs. We want to make this a change to the organization as a whole.
That's great stuff. Yeah, one of the things that I really caught my attention on what you said there is, using innovation to fix lessons learned, right? To use the innovation to fix problems in your organization. Find those pieces that need to be fixed. So that's great. Bill, what about you? From a innovation, where does it start in your organization, and how do you apply it from a
I
culture?
mean, like top down grassroots, we've failed in every single one of those ways. And I think that the title of this, it should represent that. Like if I said we've successfully done it in all the ways, I'm lying. But we have had some successes. This is a very self-serving thing, but I do think having somebody in your organization that their job is to keep an eye on the overarching strategy, and that is what my role is. I think that is one key that's there to make sure that you know how each piece fits together, and that when there is something that's going to counteract some of the initiatives that are already going, that you have the ability to help drive that in the correct way. I think that's one key aspect of it. We as a firm, we also, like Brandon, have an R&D group, and I'm one of the leaders for our R&D studio. So we actually set aside money each year to just do proof of concepts, like, is this a possibility? And it's detached from the rest of the firm. It's insulated. They can fail. I think you have to have that sort of thing. There's always things with AEC not investing in R&D compared to other industries, and I personally think that's real. So putting some effort in there. We do have a very structured process for forums. So we create a forum based on a sector, so a building type that we have. And then we also have forums for the individual disciplines and business units, and those groups meet together and they drive their own change with themselves. So what you're trying to do is to find the pockets of innovation around the firm and get them to the right forum to drive the message together. And then we have what is called the Integrated Practice Forum. And that's myself, our architecture leader, interiors, engineering, planning, operations manager. We all come together to do the cross coordination. And that's where we drive the top down change. And those are the things that impact everybody. The top down is like, even that's not simple. We've made mandates and we've failed on it. And like the keys that I've learned with that is, you put it out there, and then you have to track and measure and assume that people don't jump on something just because I said it. So I just kind of like shell myself up thinking I'm going to fail at everything. And then you just keep going because you never feel like you're failing when you know you're going to fail at the start. So we track, are they using it? You try to use some level of psychology because, if you're trying to change culture, people like to be competitive. So you present the results by region. If that's not working, present it by sector. When it is like a non-mandated thing, so we build a lot of custom tools, like a sheet tool, things like that. I track the counter commands of it. And so if I have a tool that makes a sheet, I track when somebody manually makes a sheet inside of Revit. When I see the people that are doing a lot of them, we actually do email them. And so we try to capture the information to target where we need to push and drive what's in there. And then Brandon said a big thing in the first question on have the sales pitch. If you're pushing something that doesn't have value, it's never going to work. And you have to know what the value is for each person to be able to talk to and connect with them. If I'm talking to a design heavy person, I'm going to come in with a reason why this enables design. And then if it's a very practical, pragmatic person, I'm going to come in with why it's going to save them time and be higher quality and things like that. And so have like your 4 different messages on each thing based on what role a person is when you talk to them on an individual level.
Right? Yeah. That kind of springs into kind of the next kind of question too is, what are some of those effective ways to ease that adoption and diffuse that cultural conflict with the technology adoption? Maybe Dylan, can you speak to that a little bit, maybe?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, to kind of diffuse the culture, you kind of just, make sure everybody's on the same page. And I think that comes a lot from leadership. You got to make sure your managers and your project leaders and Even, I mean, it goes all the way out to the field. You got to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page and they all want to play the same game, and they all want to win the same way. And sometimes there's different ways that you can win. And a lot of times, you know, what we do is we'll have a steering committee and we'll get all the heads together pretty much and brainstorm and try to come up with solutions. And doesn't mean everybody's going to get beat up on or anything, but it's just trying to help everybody on the team come to the same resolution. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we do. We just try to work together and try to kind of put all of our heads in the same place and try to get it to the same culture. Try to understand what the game is and how the best way we can win it.
Brandon, maybe speak a little more to culture conflict and how you kind of diffuse some of that before.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit it's very tough in our organization. You know, even when we do have the permissions to roll out some of these new technologies, it's still difficult. We have, you know, a very large workforce. Everyone's got different mindsets. So I think when we're trying to do this, it's to be targeted in our approach. You know, focus your efforts on the early adopters. Don't waste time again on that late adoption mindset. We'll you know, you'll have to deal with that later. Learn to build that team of champions that can help you communicate that change for your organization. And as Bill pointed out, like, you have to be able to help them see the value that this new tech is going to bring, how it's going to help them solve their daily tasks or solve their current problems. And then, especially for larger efforts, look to develop a set strategy to set those clear expectations, make those actionable goals, to create that shared vision. We want to make sure that when we do any of this tech adoption, that we're getting beyond a hype phase. You know, we have a lot of new tech that comes out every year. You get a lot of people, especially in our organization, what I see is we have offices that we're chomping at the bit to get a lot of this technology that often is industry maybe already has access to, and we don't want to get caught up in the hype phase of it's the shiny new toy, right? We want to make sure that that object or that tech is actually solving a current business problem. And then, as Bill pointed out, like, you're going to have different people's mindsets. You're going to have people that are going to be resistant to change or have fear. Make sure that you're approaching it at that human level. Find ways to be more empathetic. It's not always easy for me to do, but, you know, try to find ways to do that. Tech adoption isn't easy for everybody. You've got to find ways to, you know, reassure them of, you know, what the real purpose is of this or what the why is, and reinforce it with adequate training. I think that's often always overlooked. Is we throw tech out there, we throw software out there, we say just figure it out, but we're not reinforcing it and reinforcing it based off of lessons learned. And then another plug I guess I like to always add is, you know, just from an owner's perspective, especially in the project delivery sense, is that, you know, anytime we're working with contractors, it's, if you're wanting to roll out a new technology on a project, is making sure that you're keeping that customer in mind as well. What's the return on investment that they might see? How are you going to make their life easier with using this? You're going to see some benefit, but is there opportunity to bring benefit to the customer? And again, we want to make sure that we're getting beyond the hype phase of this. I don't want to see contractors pitching new tools and then we find out that the hours that they spent doing this maybe could have been focused elsewhere to handle other problems, right? If it's just a hype phase application. So again, I think the biggest problem is just getting that messaging across, and then making sure that we seek feedback. Did it work? It's okay if it maybe failed, but fail forward, you know, and fail early. Figure out where you might need to pivot and maybe implement a different technology or related technology. You've got to figure out a way to make it sustainable.
Great stuff there, Brandon. Love it. One of the things that I feel we're in the process of rolling out a new document control tool, and it's painful, right? It's a holistic change in the way that we control our documents through the lifecycle process. So it's extremely disruptive, right? So we've had to come up with a support structure that is geared for that, so that it's a top-down support structure that has a core team, a regional, an office, and even project level support for training so that if anybody's having a problem with the tool, instantly they have the right person to go to from a support perspective, so they don't just instantly bail on the tool. So I think that support function is really, really important. So who are your cultural champions in technology? I mean, and how do you leverage them? So maybe anybody got any great stories about somebody that you've turned in your organization or have maybe shown the light to and has turned out to be your greatest cultural advocate? Interested to hear any stories. Bill, maybe start.
Mine actually came up recently. I went to our Orlando office, and there's a person. He's totally one of the, like, he says that he's the curmudgeon. Like he's an old school architect. Admittedly doesn't love tech, and we worked with Imaginate Clarity to help develop the space programming add-in, and we've been working with it. But because we were working with it, some of the teams were working in beta, and like things were crashing. And this person works on Justice and Civic, very repeatable rooms and buildings, and it's perfect for that. And I went down there, he like had half of his office, and apparently they like sit together and watch every presentation that we give on a shared computer. And like, so we didn't really notice the numbers that this office was really watching. And like, he watches, he's like, we're your biggest fanboys. We love everything you put out there. And just from working with this one person and helping them on the challenging thing that they hated, and it was translating somebody's trace paper sketch of boxes into boxes that they could easily move in Revit. And it was just a simple thing. But that one person has carried that one tool into 40 different projects just because like they watch everything that we put out and they champion the message. And so just addressing their needs quickly, it always led to that. And it was like, and to me, it was like, oh, this person's really grouchy and not happy, and we just need to help them and keep it going because I want the tool to go. I didn't realize quite what we were doing at the time, but we built the biggest advocate in the firm, and they're like putting an entire sector into one tool without us doing anything.
Alex?
Yeah, on my end, I would say, a lot of things at a general contractor, construction manager like McCarthy always kind of like, meet the rubber meets the road in the field, right? And a lot of our superintendents become the mechanism for success or failure with adopting new strategies, new technologies from office to field. And I like to tell the story about one of my favorite superintendents. His name is Jared for the purposes of this conversation. Jared is kind of one of those guys where he's old school. He's a middle-aged superintendent, old school in some ways, but new school in others. And he discovered years ago on one of his large projects, having an appetite for BIM and having an appetite for how technology can transform delivering work at the field level. So he kind of took it upon himself to learn some new tools, some new technologies, kind of undercover by himself, didn't really have anybody help him. And then once he kind of, found this love for technology, or found this affinity for how things like BIM or field technology can drive productivity, can drive quality, can drive better communication, he kind of became that field advocate that we've always kind of been looking for. And what's great about superintendents, those of you guys that have a superintendent in your life that is they love to talk about their successes and their failures. And once something is very successful, that grows legs very quickly. And so promoting the use of technology and innovative ideas for Jared, quickly grew to his peers. We have things called peer group meetings that happen quarterly at McCarthy, and he would come to those and share some of that. And then other people started to kind of stand up and find their opportunities to share and grow things. And so that's kind of a natural incubator in a way of having a peer within a peer group growing some of those things at the field level. And then other people see that and they kind of get inspired too, to, right, hey, where can I find that same nugget of value or that same opportunity to grow and innovate like Jared did. So we see a lot of that happening more than ever now at the field level with people that are brand new to our industry, people that are 25, 30 years in industry, and there's plenty of other stories to share there too. But that's one of my favorite ones because that really gained a lot of notoriety here for what we now call a cultural virtual building. That is something that McCarthy takes a lot of pride in, and that really spawned from the the Jareds, that peer group of folks believing in building virtually, using these virtual tools, these technology forward tools, to drive better collaboration, better quality, better product for our clients at the end of the day. So I give a lot of credit and thanks there to him, and that's grown in a lot of other areas in the business, and that's one of the ways where I feel like our innovation imperative has become cultural.
Dylan, what about you? I mean, you see that in, say, the shop, for example, instead of in the field. I mean, how do you see that that cultural champion evolving for you?
Yeah, so for us, that's kind of where it originated. For us, we had a hard time, the heart of our whole entire process is in our fab shops and how we can prefabricate a lot of our components in our fab shops, deliver them out to the field, and then it's plug and play for our field guys if everything goes right. And so we were having a hard time with that, and so we were trying to figure out, what's a good solution? How do we resolve it? What's a good way to track it too? Because when you got these really big jobs, you got millions and millions of parts coming out of the fab shop, and you got to track every single component. And the last thing you want to do is start duplicating items, because when you start duplicating, you start losing money. So we found a solution. We came upon a software. It's web-based, and as long as everybody's doing the right process, it can track everything. We get little QR codes printed out on our tickets and on our drawings. You can take a scanner or a phone, and you can see the status. And really, the champion of that was our shop. Our shop took it on. They get all the jobs that goes through VC. It goes into a queue for them, and then they just start knocking it all out and putting it on the tickets. And a real big success for us at Murphy. We had this big pharmaceutical job. We actually worked on it with you, Chris. And it was a very tight schedule, very complicated, a lot of moving parts. And our project team took it on too. They got the full swing of it, so we were able to track every little nuance in the job. And if something was going to go, hey, we're not going to use that equipment anymore, we were able to flag it right off the bat, stop all processes, get the new equipment in, and then reboot back up. So before, if you ever got that notification, it took us a while to stop the momentum of the fab shop and then pick it back up. With our new processes, it was almost instantaneous. Hey, stop that, focus on this, and then once it was plugged back in, jump back on it. So, yeah, I mean, our champions right now is definitely our project teams, our project management teams in our shop, and with the success from them, what's happened is it's actually slingshot all the way up to the top and to the corner offices here, and they're starting to believe in the process, which is huge. Because before, something like a multi-million-dollar job and trying to track where you're at, we can pull that up right now and we can tell you, hey, yeah, for level 1, area B, we're 80%, installed, 20%'s in the fab shop, 30%'s on hold because we're trying to figure something out. So we can actually pull all those numbers, see everything in there, and actually give a logistics standpoint, because we have all these little sectors that are embracing this innovation, which is technically starting to turn into a culture change, and the corner offices are starting to see that, which is real nice.
Yeah, that's great. So your culture has shifted to the point that the numbers are starting to be, and the data is flowing through the organization all the way up to the top, where they can see the attachment. That's
Hey, Chris, can I chime in on that one real quick about the corner office? So, it's interesting, right? When you talk about innovation and you talk about culture, and then you mention like the C-suite or leadership, what's interesting to me and what I've seen change in our organization is, when you start trying to balance things like cost with how hard would it be to implement with, will people actually adopt this? I've seen a big change in recent years with senior leadership saying, hey, if you go through a process and you believe this will impact our business in a positive way, and you believe that the cost benefit is worth it, then we will set aside some dollars to do these things, right? Rather than doing a lot of that hard work and kind of getting to the end and senior leadership saying, we don't have that in the budget this year, or well, we don't really feel that's going to move the needle. A lot of it is groundswell and getting critical mass and getting buy-in from a large peer group, or a group of peers that carry experience or carry enough weight or have a good business case, And ultimately, if the company can make allocations for those types of things, right? And we just happen to have a cool name for ours. We call it the Spark Tank. We roll ideas through the Spark Tank, and if it passes the smell test and gets past the Spark Tank or Shark Tank, then usually there's a path forward to getting something implemented because there's already dollars allocated or there's already leadership buy-in to say, hey, this is why we have this group of people here to vet these ideas and make sure they make good business sense. And that group of people are from all different areas of our business, right? So it's not just a bunch of like tech nerds, right? There are people from all different departments in the organization that sit on these Spark Tanks in all the regions in McCarthy, and they're the ones kind of shepherding these good ideas forward to help drive business value. I think that's something really cool that we've done that I think, for anybody on the call here, when you're kind of wondering, well, how does this apply to my organization? As you're kind of listening to this, like how can I inspire change or innovation in a cultural way? We're kind of weaving that now into the fabric of the business, right? Which is, hey, it's okay to innovate. It's okay to lean forward with something that might be unknown. While it might be a shiny object today, if you believe there's good, strong, and solid business value, sure, let's give a pilot project an opportunity to try this out, or let's scale it at a small level to see if it can scale bigger. And I think scale is a really good operative word too, talking about senior leadership, right? If you can prove that something can scale and you start with a pilot and that pilot proves successful, then you're already in the door for taking something, global or national or however your organization is structured. So I just didn't want to lose the opportunity when Dylan said, the corner office. Like, we all have a corner office. There's senior leaders in our companies for a reason. Find ways to partner with them and look for something cultural like that group of stakeholders that can help shepherd those things forward.
Good stuff. All right. Let's see. Let's go move on to kind of the next question. So, so as you guys are vetting new technologies or processes that involve a change of that could affect culture, you determine an ROI for that? Is there a new technology ROI, and are you only purely looking at hours saved numbers based kind of thing, or is there a true human element that you factor into your ROIs? Bill,
One of my favorite topics. So it ROI, like it's a hard thing. Like we get stuck on a lot, especially with technology. So there's a presentation that I saw from Microsoft for Azure Digital Twins, and they talk about this pyramid and their, what is the value of digital twins? And like half the people out there can't explain what a digital twin is or agree what it is. So I know it's really nebulous. But what I loved is they had this pyramid of value basically, and it was the base of it was the easy to track things that are the understood value first. So for them, it was, oh, well, if we track people inside of buildings and we fine tune the energy systems and the light, and there's an energy reduction, that's the reason we're doing this. And so like that is the base value of the pyramid. And then on top of that, it was like the operational changes. Like, well, if you see all these people in there, you could start to target where you're cleaning, or you could change the use of rooms, or fine tune your footprint of your actual buildings. And that's the harder to track because there's multiple variables in it. If you identify it and don't implement it, there's no value there. But it's the agreed upon thing that was tangible enough that people could see it and say, yeah, that makes sense. I'm good with that. And so I've realized after seeing that presentation, I've kind of always operated in that same way. And so when it's design technology, I've always had three questions that I ask from a startup. Does this improve efficiency? Does it enhance quality? And does it enable our people to design better? And if it does those three things, it's a no-brainer. We investigate it. If it's one of them, I do deeper dives into what this is. When we build our own tools, we actually track the output. So like earlier, I mentioned a sheet tool. When you make a sheet, you make a view, you name the sheet, you set the key plan on the sheet, you put some schedules on it. We actually track all of that on the back end of an automation that we build. And so we put that in there, and yeah, there's an immediate time savings on the automation of that. But then what else do you do on the project with the time saving? Do you QA/QC more? Do you review? Those are the things that are hard to track in the soft metrics. So I track the automation time, but then I talk about the soft metrics. And after time, we hope to see a decrease in RFIs on projects, a decrease in claims and things like that. Those are or an increase in design awards. we want to see that, but I can't track that and I can't claim the entire value of it, but I can the automated time at the bottom. So I really kind of operate by that base value of what can we track and show, what do I hope to see, and what am I looking out there for? And then, at the end, you hope that that number on the bottom adds up to like 10 times the amount of the effort that you put into it. Otherwise you have no chance.
Yeah, 3 times the ROI was kind of what I was always taught. So, Alex, how about you? How does McCarthy determine ROI? So,
well, I'm gonna have to get a copy of Bill's pyramid of value. That sounds interesting. But I've cut it and diced it a number of different ways throughout my career, and I think what we've started to move towards in recent years is less voting, rubric scale of, ones and zeros or 1 through 5, or how much pain does this tool relieve or apply, depending on what you're trying to do, and really trying to get more into a kind of a soft pilot test and crowdsource, what is the perceived value versus actual value, and trying to get people to really kind of come to terms with, does this new potential tool or solution reduce the number of tools in our technology stack? Does it just overall improve quality of life? And is it just more easily adoptable, right? Kind of based on a sample size, right? Like almost kind of like, having a drug and going out to a select group of people and testing it, right? We're trying to make sure that in general, for the groups of people that have to operate in our business, can these tools, can these solutions be scaled with general buy-in? And does that general buy-in help quality of life, ease the experience, and overall reduce the number of tools, which overall saves the company money, right? Overall, we believe that if your quality of life is improved, if you're going to use it, it will probably drive value, and it will probably save you time and make you better at your job. And so if overall we can start to look at solutions in that manner, we kind of get away from the, well, Susie scored this one 6.5, and Jeff scored it 7.2. And we're going to go with Jeff over Susie, right? We're really trying to make sure that our core group of users, right, our sample size of people are really trying to use the same things, right? As our company has gotten a lot bigger, and as we operate across the United States in different regions, in different market sectors with different clients, and different partners, we're trying to have a common set of tools and experiences that when people have that experience, it's highly repeatable, highly scalable across the organization. So rather than someone implementing reality capture solution A in St. Louis and someone in San Francisco implementing solution B, we're trying to make it a one-stop shop as much as we can, which we believe overall will save the company money and make us more effective.
Brandon, I'm going to ask you too. I know we might not have you on the list here, but how does the core value or figure out ROI?
A little tougher. It's along the same lines of what Bill and Alex said. I think the challenge that we often have is listening to the variety of opinions, how to scale those. I think the biggest takeaways and kind of what we focus on is what Alex said is same manner. We have projects all over the globe. We work with different stakeholders that are, have different language, speak in different languages, use different tools, are different skill sets. We work with large contractors, small contractors, what have you. We do a lot of in-house stuff. We need to make this all applicable, scalable, and sustainable. And so some of our offices might leverage tools that other ones don't. We need to be tracking, how districts are operating across our portfolio, what things are valuable to keep, what things should we maybe part ways with. Kind of hitting back on the previous question, for us, it's also not just looking at what new technology can we add. We are also in our organization required to follow a lot of processes. If you've ever worked with the government, there are a lot of standards and requirements you have to follow. So looking back at what are these not just the contract requirements, what are all these design standards, what are all the government standards that I have to follow, and the directives and everything. Are there things in there that we can update and improve to make our overall lives easier, to improve the project delivery challenges that we often face? So when we look at it, the return on investment, it's a lot of it is just the human aspect of how can I make their job better or easier. How can we save money? You know, like Alex pointed to, like with your technology stack, it'd be great if we could start standardizing it and not having to have, you know, 100 different vendors because we have to cater to everyone's unique needs. But it's getting to the what's really going to drive our business. What tools do we need to support that? And how do we overall communicate that message to the wider audience? Like, this is the path of going forward. We might have to drop a new tool. We might have to add a new tool, but we're going to be consistent in our approach. We spend too much time trying to customize things for every customer that we support or every project that we work with. So, you know, again, getting into the ones and twos and the calculable numbers, a little more difficult to assess. It may be in our organization. We do try to assess more of kind of, I think, what Bill was speaking to, of just what's the value added to the project. Can I give time back to somebody? Can I make a reduction in workflows? You know, like, based off this new technology, can I reduce your effort toward completing design reviews? Can I reduce your time it takes to complete a mod or complete something with change management or respond to RFIs? Like, we start calculating those aspects, not so much, you know, I rank this software at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of a thing, if that makes sense.
Okay. And it's interesting as we're talking about this, you know, we're all kind of coming from the construction side of this, you know, that most of the people on this call are owners, that obviously their tech stacks are going to look different than our tech stacks, right? The software that they're using to manage their facilities is going to look a lot different than so.
Yeah, I think Chris too, on along that is, as we move forward, our big focus too also is, how do we minimize the amount of information exchanges? We're never going to all play necessarily in the same sandbox as far as the tools and things that we use, but how can we be more interoperable? How can I limit, you know, if Bill is our designer, or, you know, Chris, you guys are our designer, how do I eliminate all this back and forth and throwing things over the fence? And then depending on the contract method, like, how do I now turn that into construction? We want to try to eliminate, you know, all the amount of tools, let's say, but we want to make sure we're also not corrupting the information. We want to make sure that the data can feed into ultimately the end goal, our customers' facility management system. We want to build them a pretty facility, or, you know, whatever site, whatever the project is, but we also want to make sure that that data is usable downstream.
Great. And that's a whole new focus for us, really. I think, or hyper focus really in our industry, and is how to get there. So this is the kind of groups that can make that happen. We aren't in contract groups. We just got to talk about it, figure out how to make it work. Next question. So what do you think, I'm going to ask this for all of you, but what would be your one biggest tip to ensure culture adoption in new technologies or emerging technologies? So not necessarily something that's implemented at your firm, or that you even, but just where technology is emerging and where it's going.
Yeah, I can hit on this. I've been involved with a couple emerging technologies here at Murphy that we've implemented, and I learned pretty quick what that was. And I'd say the biggest tip is, one, make sure that whatever you're about to feed to the group on a workflow, make sure it works. The other thing is, make sure to have a good roadmap. If you don't have either of those, it's going to fail. And with our industry and construction, if it fails, all it takes is once and then it's dead. So you got to really, really make sure that you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted before you give it to that group.
I'll piggyback on that, because I was stuck between two, and one is like, if you put something out to the group and it fails, the stench of failure just never goes away. Like, it is always there, and you can't get rid of it, and you can't get over it, no matter how good things are. So being targeted. And then the other thing is, like, look way far ahead. Know what your challenges are going to be. I've always thought of, like, if I gave a presentation on how to do it, I'd have some picture of like a bloodhound rooting through the grass and pheasants flying up, because you're like way ahead popping up the issues and then you're shooting them down to fix them, or if it could be road construction and you're patching holes and building a bridge before anybody can even see it. If you fix the things you know that are going to be there and have the answers for those challenges when people get there, it seems like you've got it all covered and it's going to go a lot smoother than it would if you didn't.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback on what Bill said. Is like, for me, it was always focus your attack. Don't try to eat the whole elephant, right? Don't try to do this widespread adoption. I think what Dylan said is like, and Alex, maybe this means you need to test it in a sandbox environment on some pilot projects before widespread rollout. But find that specific niche. Don't just try to take on everything. We've got a lot of times where we see some of our offices saying like, oh, I want this tool, I want laser scanning, I want VR, I want all it. Like, get the basics right. We're doing a large effort right now with back to basics in our organization. Like, know the fundamentals, know your business strategy, then start looking at, if you need to, you may not always need to add new technology. You may just need to enhance or revolutionize your processes. But look at how those technologies are going to improve that business goal. I guess a quote that I came across that I always really liked was, just more and better tools don't always solve flawed processes or unengaged people. So making sure that you're focusing your efforts in the right direction. And as Bill pointed out, make sure you keep in mind what's on the horizon, is something that we tend to focus on.
Yeah. And just to wrap it up here for us, I would say it's always kind of where I like to start, which is go to the point of attack and determine your conditions of satisfaction, right? Whether it's a core group of people or a select project or a targeted group of stakeholders, like, go to them, go to the point of attack where they live and work every single day, sit down in their environment and ask them, what would it take to solve your pain points, to address these needs, and let that guide you to then get to the point of the solution, right? Don't say, hey, we've R&D'd this solution already, what do you think? Listen to them first. Allow them to speak to you and say, whether it's, navigating BIM or 360 photography or digital twin or whatever it may be, right? Let them tell you what they believe that they know about it, what pain they're trying to relieve, and what needs they're trying to, to have come to reality, and then go and solutionize from there, right? Solutionizing first, I think, has always gotten us in trouble. Those of us have been doing this long enough. So go to the point of attack, get the conditions of satisfaction from your stakeholder group, and go from there.
Yeah, I love it. I think you have to solve problems with technology, not get technology and then try and find and apply a problem to it, right? The way to make things effective is to make people's jobs easier and to make them a part of the process, a part of help growing something and making change. So over communication would be my tip, is over communicate the plan of implementing a new piece of technology, what it's intended to solve, what it's not intended to solve. Because a lot of people try to put a round, peg in a square hole, or square hole and a round, square peg in a round hole. So, and it doesn't fit. So making sure that the appropriate technology applies for the problem. Okay. Let's see. What do you see your culture influencing next in terms of tech adoption, rollout, or innovation?
Is that my starting with that one?
Yep.
All right. What do we see next? Well, I think what's interesting right now, and I mentioned us having these spark tanks in our regions of our organization, is they have this really cool process for kind of tracking all of our technologies, and kind of having a status of like where they all kind of are in the pipeline, which is really cool, right? And as you have a lot of people who have similar ideas, right, we're trying to merge them together, right? If one person, for example, one office says, well, hey, I heard about this new technology called OpenSpace, right? Or I heard about this new technology called Revisto, whatever it may be. Chances are somebody else has heard about it or someone is poking around it too. So what's nice is, to see what's next you can go into this online, visual experience, this technology tracker, and kind of see where things are. You can upvote them, you can comment on them, you can add information to them in like a chat feed. It's pretty cool, right? It's kind of like Facebook, but for technology tracking. And so there's kind of this feed on, hey, this area of the business is looking at this tool. And it allows people to now have kind of this common knowledge center of like, well, hey, this region's testing this. I'd like to test it too. And then you can start to talk about, well, where's your funding source? Who's helping kind of pay for this? And, is there an opportunity to get preferred pricing if we go in on more than one pilot? So I see that as what's next, continuing to grow, getting that that hub of ideas, that hub of innovation, spurring more and more things. And from there, it makes adoption rollout easier, and it makes things a bit more understood in terms of like, well, where did it come from? Has it been vetted? Did people in the organization have their eyes on this? So it's really, really cool to kind of see that taking its next life and moving on to next steps. I guess to that point, right, Bill kind of said earlier, right, there's a lot of buzzwords right now. The idea of digital twin has been a buzz the last few years. I think more and more people are starting to understand how that may apply to their business. So I see that continuing to take off. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, autonomous and semi-autonomous robotics. A lot of those things continue to kind of trend forward. But I also see the evolution of automated design, taking form. Bill had talked about that in part 1 of this series, and I see things like ChatGPT, for those of you guys paying attention, helping to evolve that, right? Computers being able to help us with a set of parameters based on commands to actually generate something real. All those things trending in the innovative direction.
Yeah, partly like tech Wikipedia. That's cool. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Great way to capture all those ideas in one spot. So,
Yeah, Alex, I really like the idea of that technology tracker. I mean, you see that kind of in some of these, the think tanks where you can contribute to industry technology. You can contribute to what their product they're rolling out is. I think that's an interesting concept. I know our organization struggles a lot with this. There's so many people working in different offices. Everybody's trying to do some of the same things, but nobody's holistically looking at who's doing what. And so often we're finding ourselves like reinventing the wheel, or we're doing all these just set aside pilot projects, and they're becoming one-offs. So how do you standardize that a little bit more? I really like that concept. I would say from USACE, in terms of our adoption and rollout, our organization, there's a lot of different things we're looking at. Some of the bigger focus items right now are just looking to rebrand and modernize our construction management platform to more effectively work with our stakeholders. And not to beat on the buzzword, but yes, digital twins, more so digital twins in support of, and this is unique to us, but Army installation modernization strategy. We work with a lot of Air Force bases, and Army, campuses where installations where we have to do repeat work for them. How do you build out a digital twin that can leverage all this data that we give them during active projects, but then they can turn around and use to support their operations and maintenance and upward reporting to higher levels. We're spending a lot of time with that right now, and honestly, a great example, if you guys haven't seen it, is the work that's going on with Tyndall Air Force Base. They're spending a huge investment right now on building that out for the Air Force. Outside of that, we've got a lot of other things going on just with leveraging VR and AR for enhanced visualization and even safety training. But we also do a lot, like I said before, with our R&D labs. There's a lot of things that beyond just the construction industry that we focus on, with just design, construction, materials, geospatial, IT, what have you. But as they do that research, understanding how we can implement it at the district level on our projects. So those are some of the things that we're focusing on.
So for us, I handle our Autodesk renewal, and this past year we had like a 2-for-1, and it still went up dramatically from the last time we did it. and Autodesk has announced that their pricing will only go up and that there's no additional value, that you can't do 2-for-1s in the future. So at a minimum, ours doubled. And so, let's just throw a fictitious number of it went from 100 million to 200 million. It's not bad. I'm making it up, but I can do all the automation in the world. And I know at the end of this renewal, that is eaten up and I'm back at baseline of what the cost is for the firm. So we have to look at some big shifts. And like when you're talking about culture and change, if I said you're going to change dramatically how you work, and AI also is going to do the same thing of you're going to shift how you work entirely. We haven't had to do that. We've been focused on little improvements on our process that can make a small difference, but we haven't shifted the entire process in a long time. And I think we're going to get pushed into it within the next 5 years. And so big shifts are coming for us, and we're trying to prepare people for that. We're trying to prepare people for the idea of the changes that come, because that's going to be the big culture challenge we have.
Yeah, I agree. I think as software as a service becomes a reality, right? And cloud-based solutions become the predominant solution, we have to figure out ways to justify the cost of all of the software that we're using currently and make it more efficient. So there's definitely ways, and these are the things that I'm trying to kind of coach at CRV is we don't even use Revit to the full extent that we can use Revit right now, right? We could use it at a much higher level to do much better design or higher level things from a design side. So why shouldn't we be investing in using the full brunt of the technology that we already paid for? Dylan, what about you?
Yeah, I can hit on it. So, I kind of gave my little story about, how we had a really great success on this pharmaceutical job. We were able to track all these different things and all these data points, and how it's kind of like flown over the company and everybody's seeing the success, and now everybody wants a seat at the table. Everybody wants to eat the same cake, kind of a thing. So, our influence probably is going to go 2 different directions. It's probably going to go internally. It's probably going to go through our estimating and purchasing department. We're going to start leveraging some past data to try to leverage our estimating and make us more competitive, as well as let us understand what that risk assessment is. So we're going to, start using the data and let the data talk. And the goal is as we've been collecting this data over the years, but have we been leveraging it? Probably not to its best ability. So we're starting to formulate some containers or silos to feed back in to help those processes. The second way that influencing and stuff is going to go is pretty much what everybody on this panel has talked about, which is digital twins. And usually the subcontractor, which is the guy that's installing all this stuff, has to put in all that data. So that's a big thing that we're looking for. The owners, general contractors are looking for this data as far as what type of pump is it, how many gallons per minute is going through it, what's the serial number. They want all this information, and for a subcontractor, they have to go and harvest all that. Some of that information sounds like it's really great and it's easy to get, but a lot of it's not. There's a lot of hunting that has to go into finding that information. So we're trying to navigate that, but I feel like with the way the culture is going, with the way construction's going, with all this information data out there, that's going to be our next tackle. That's going to be our next island that we float to and try to figure out how to navigate is, how do we get all this data and how do we do it efficiently? We don't want to put a bunch of effort in and get a lot out of it. So how do we almost make that a one-to-one of, all the effort that we have to put into it? How can we actually make it a good benefit for us as a subcontractor as well as a benefit for the owner?
Love that. So, and that feeds right into, definitely not an Autodesk 100%, but we're going down the Autodesk construction project. So using assets as a higher level function and defining what that pump is at the design level, and then information build on that throughout the full life cycle, so that whenever that model's handed over at the end, everything is there in containers. A digital twin, where
Yep.
pretty we're all looking at that same. Good. So we do have quite a bit of time left, and so let's open it up and see if anybody has any questions from the audience. All needs skills, pyramid of value. Yes, I agree.
So there's got to be a few questions out there, but yeah, Bill, you gotta send that pyramid out.
I can't take claim on that. I said it was Microsoft.
Oh, look, there's Alex. Hey, Alex. Culture can enable innovation or implementation for all the reasons stated. How are you respective cultures enabling or enhancing training? What does training look like for your org once a pilot test is successful? So how do you train on new technology after it's implemented? Is that what you're going out?
I could probably
Chris,
jump in. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was to say, if I need to, I can jump in. Like for our organization, how we've handled that is it goes back to that strategic planning of, you know, building that roadmap. I think that Dylan spoke to is, you know, when do you plan to implement these technologies? What are your metrics for success and how you're going to measure them? And then looking at that training rollout of, is this formalized training? Is this something that we're going to have a vendor come in? Is this something that we're going to do in-house with maybe just some kind of over-the-shoulder technical exchanges? Are we leveraging e-learning platforms? Regardless of what it is, I think you do need to build that template for how you're going to roll that out as far as an official training plan, and then look to reinforce it as users begin to test things, right? Check in on with them. How's this adoption going? Is it successful? What are you guys struggling with? That's where, you know, like folks on this call, the champions can help, you know, reiterate and reinforce that effort.
Yeah, for DLR Group, we did put an investment. We called it DLR Academy, and actually hired people dedicated to it. Yeah, and it is evolving. When they first did, they just pushed out all sorts of typical corporate training that, like, I keep complaining. I'm like, if you go work at Enterprise, you go and train for a month for a desk job, and then we put people in design positions and we just put them on the job. Like we don't train anybody on how to use the tools to do the job, and then we say, well, that's just technical training. And like, no, that's how to do your job training. So we have to shift that focus. And so one thing that I found in a happy accident building a data warehouse proof of concept. So data warehouse is a bunch of connected pieces of information, and then you like put it together and say, why does this matter? And I had uploaded LinkedIn Learning, like learning hours for employees. And then I had all of our Clarity, like moderate. So whatever like moderating tool for good or bad Revit files you have. And it, when you upload into Power BI on the web, it gives you these insights. And I got an email notification of, oh, is this interesting? And it was number of hours learned on Revit models. And from connecting this information, I suddenly had the teams of people working together on the same file and how much learning they're doing. And so this was last week, I talked to the learning group, and we're going to start looking at this to see like if we're doing targeted training or just broad, I'm a super learner, I am learning all day long, and see what the trends are. Are there profitable projects with this group? Because I think that if you have that, you can reinforce the message, and that's a big deal of, you know, is there value in doing this? And then the firm gets behind it.
Alex, what's training look like at McCarthy?
Yeah, for us, you know, I think a big part of it goes back to like those champions, right? If the champions are leaning forward saying everyone needs to be using this tool, like hands down, right? Easily can get that into peer groups, get that into some peer trainings. If there are people saying, well, hey, there's a broken part of our process, or we have procedures that are happening where there's gaps and there are things that need to be closed up, and I think these new tools can aid that with a better workflow or a better sign-off process or a better deliverable. That takes some time, right? Usually you got to get some people together to like kind of get buy-in and consensus and sign off on that. But the rollout to that, which I think is very important, besides the peer group trainings and the just-in-time trainings, is a knowledge center. Having a common place for people to go and grab this stuff. And so whatever that knowledge center looks like to you, we're actually going through a pretty big revamp right now. with our quality approach in terms of having this kind of this home base for knowledge. It's more than just dumping stuff though into a SharePoint folder though, right? It's connecting it to the business, allowing it to be searchable, giving people access to subject matter experts in the company that can help drive these things. And so I think there's a lot of kind of wire connecting to happen when you do these things, so that it doesn't fall flat, right? It doesn't just happen in one training and then you never see these people again, or there's no guides or support mechanisms. So have those support mechanisms kind of factored into the equation when it comes to implementation is kind of my punchline, right? And whether that's a knowledge center or SMEs getting out to the field and seeing your projects and your people, or having really good guides and workflows that can be the leave behind after you give these meaningful trainings, so that they don't just lose their luster after doing one. So find ways to make sure that lifeline to your knowledge center stays intact.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. We're doing the same thing with the change in culture, that it's just making us be better at training. Like Bill said, we're kind of known for the industry of like, hey, congratulations, here's your job, good luck. And we don't really do a great job at sitting down and, hey, here's X, Y, and Z of what you're supposed to do on your job. And if somebody is not doing that, relaying that back to them. Usually it's trial by fire, you get burnt, and then that's how you learn not to do it again. And I think with the culture and stuff that's kind of changing, we understand that it's not very cost effective to do it that way. You throw people in there, make errors, and then lose money. Spend the money up front, train the people correctly, and then reap the benefits later. So yeah, Murphy's doing the same thing that kind of Alex kind of hit on. We're kind of making a knowledge base. We had a bunch of SOPs out there for all of our procedures on how to do different tasks. And one thing that we're kind of changing up, because we're understanding, with how the culture is growing and we're getting new people, older people are retiring, younger kids are coming in, how do they learn? What's their big thing? And, a lot of our SOPs were handwritten, typed up, had a couple pictures in there. Newer SOPs now have more pictures in them. People love pictures. People learn from them a lot quicker. And now we're actually changing again and pivoting, and we're actually just making YouTube videos and posting those. And then that way, if we get a foreman, if we got an office employee, we direct them. We have everything categorized, and then we say, hey, if this is the process you're doing, watch this SOP video, and it walks them through it directly. So that way, it's a process that's repeatable. That's the big thing, is to make something repeatable, and it's not something new every single time.
Yeah, and one thing I guess to add to that too, I think that both Dylan and Alex covered is, leveraging these tools, and Bill, you spoke to it earlier, like tools like LinkedIn Learning offer you capabilities to take your own videos that you develop in-house and integrate them with already standardized e-learning videos. So look for approaches like that as well. I think another thing that we don't always consider, and I think Alex talked a little bit about it, is timing, right?
Mhm.
Like Bill mentioned, if you need software training, sure, I can get you in the door and I can send you to a vendor's class, or I can even teach it, whatever. But if you're not going to go apply it for months on end, you're not going to retain that, right? That training. So making sure that the timing of that is key. But also, I think, as Alex pointed out, is you've got to have something next in the pipeline, right? You've got to make sure that once they learn this, for at least some of the technologies, there's no turning back. Don't let them fall back into old habits. Have a next project in the pipeline where they can apply that technology.
I think it's interesting that I'm seeing a major shift from written SOPs or websites to video learning, like you guys are talking about. I think we're shifting to more video, YouTube kind of learning. It's just
They're quicker to learn and easier to maintain. Have you used ScribeHow?
I have not.
I highly recommend it. You can do the free version, it'll do website, but it just tracks every click and takes a screenshot as you do it. And so you just do your thing, and then it gives you a report out, and you delete the steps and edit the ones that are not right, and then share it. And things like that, just tech changes too quick.
Let's see. Got another question here in the chat. Mary Daniels from Woodard. I really liked what Alex shared about Spark Tank and what Bill shared about having a budget funding specifically for proof of concept. how do your firms determine how much to set aside for this? Is it a percentage of total revenues, or do you go based on what is in the pipeline for innovation? You try to budget funds for what you anticipate experimenting with in a given year, or is it all over the board?
So since my name's in there, I'll jump in. We're in a weird place in that like myself and our design research leader are the two R&D studio leaders. And so, like we lead our respective groups, and then we come together for how we budget for and spend R&D. And we've changed it a little bit each year. The one thing that we hit into this year is we tried to do that percent of total revenue. And the number was pretty big because we keep growing as a firm. And what we've run into is every year in Q2 seems to be, and Q2 for us is January through March. It seems to be a little light. And so we get our funds for the year in Q1. We have too many things. We don't get running. And then Q2, they say, hold up, don't spend any of the overhead things. We don't do it. And then Q3 is business planning for the next year. And they say, you didn't spend enough of the R&D funds, so we don't want to do that amount. So we've shifted more towards less of a dollar slush fund and trying to put it towards people. And so this year I hired a person on my team dedicated to doing R&D, and their return on investment is once per quarter outputting a packaged presentation of a vetted idea that has potential for 10x return on their salary. And that way, if we implement just one, we're always doing 10 times the return on the investment of this person and really shifting the firm. And then actually we get like this catalog of a bunch of stuff that we could do at some point in time when we're ready. And if we do 2 of those, that's a 20x return. So it's a big deal. And so having a person dedicated to that, I think, is what we really needed to do versus, oh, we have this fund, we'll pull a person off a project. Like doing R&D with billable people is really hard because if they're available, the firm's not doing great and they don't want to put a person to it. And if they aren't available and the firm's doing great, you can't get anybody to do the work and you're stuck.
It's a great point. Love it. Alex, you want to talk any on how you guys cover your expenses for R&D?
Yeah, I can be quick with this one. I mean, I think for us, it a lot of times comes down to, who the ownership group is going to be for this, who's going to shepherd it, right? And, between some of the different groups that help kind of fund things or help move things forward between, what I oversee and lead with VDC, we have an emerging technology group. We have corporate IT, of course, that kind of is overall for governance and cybersecurity and whatnot. And then we have project teams that are willing to sponsor too, right? And they have abilities to help contribute. It just kind of depends on, where the innovation is coming from. Is it a pilot? Is it something we're doing that's larger? And I think ultimately, right, that going back to that corner office comment earlier that that Dylan had about, senior leadership being willing to spend a little to save more in the long run, because it takes some time and some capital to go through some of these things, right? It's hard to just spin up a new piece of technology and it be radically successful magically, on day one and in a short turnaround. So I think you have to kind of balance a lot of different things here. And as long as everybody is kind of carrying a little bit of something, then I think you can get there. Ultimately, though, we're all here to make sure that we're making our lives easier and working more efficiently. So there's something to be said for allocating dollars that will save dollars down the road. It just comes down to, more than one group of people in the organization believing in that. So I think it takes conversation with a number of stakeholder groups. And so, for the person who had made this comment, Mary, I would say in your organization, if you're looking to do something similar to what we're doing, I would try to grab the forward thinkers, right? Grab the innovators, people that either have the ear of leadership or are part of leadership, and find ways to make those allocations happen so that the innovation can really take off and not stall out or hit a roadblock when the innovation, gets to a point where it thinks it can be successful. Uh-oh, did we lose Chris?
We might have.
I'm
really good at.
I do see Alex had another question about just, as these tools progress, who makes that ultimate decision? How do you get your department to handle accountability? And Alex, I can take this one real quick before we wrap up. from our standpoint, kind of what Alex was just saying is you've got to get senior leadership buy-in. You've got to communicate that message. You know, I can sit here all day and say, hey, I saw a new product or a new tool, I think we should buy it. That's going to fall flat. I've got to be able to tie it to our business needs. We're going to also test a whole bunch of things, maybe perhaps in a given year, kind of what Bill was speaking. What we've tried to do also is, as part of allocating those funds for that fiscal year, is we need to start prioritizing them. What are the R&D efforts that we need to spend the most time and effort on looking into? We might need to, you know, have different folks or different groups look at different R&D projects, but ultimately we want to make sure that that funding for that fiscal year is set for the ones that have the most return or the immediate return. You know, so maybe you need to build out a yearly fiscal year plan, but you maybe need to do a 5-year look ahead. You're not going to be able to adopt all these new technologies at once. And as far as, you know, fully getting it, you know, the buy-in and who makes that decision, if it's a small scale, at least for our company, if it's a small scale, it's usually at that district office level, you know, chief of engineering, chief of construction. If it's larger, it's usually at an enterprise level at headquarters. It means we're getting usually enterprise licenses because we're going to have full-on adoption. So. Anybody else want to comment on Alex's question? Otherwise, we're going to probably need to wrap up.
And for us, it's dependent on the tool and if it's a mandated thing. And if it's mandated, we start from our top down, and it's not the technologist responsibility, it's the disciplines. And so, like, if it, because we're architecture, interiors, engineering, planning, so we work to advise the disciplines of this is what you should do. We help them implement and push it, but if they're not driving it, there's no, like, there's nothing above them actually saying they have to do it. And there, you know, it becomes a conversation in reviews and all sorts of different places, right down to profitability of projects to a project manager. So it starts top down depending on what it is.
All right. And with that, I guess just some closing remarks. You know, I wanted to thank everybody for participating today. It's been a great discussion. You know, we hope that you've all taken away something. Thank you to our speakers again for your time today and all the prep it took to prepare this program. Kelly Jackson, our executive director, wanted me to remind any non-members to reach out to her with any questions on membership benefits. You know, please join our over 180 other organizations who make up our membership community. Don't forget about our upcoming events and make sure to mark those on your calendar. Lastly, please complete the quick survey you'll find in your inbox. We do use that feedback to continually improve our programs. And then again, thank you all for being here. We appreciate you, and have a good rest of the afternoon.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
guys.
Very much appreciate it.